Happy Thursday, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Hope you're having a blessed week. We've got some major weather to talk about with a storm impacting the southeast and especially the east coast of Florida. We've had some major flood problems here in the Fort Lauderdale area, and those problems, unfortunately, are not going to go away farther north today. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you kind of what is going on here. So a few days ago, it looked like we would have some form of a surface low forming near the upper low here that's moving into Louisiana, Mississippi, and maybe a subtropical system could get a name. Now, that is not happening, at least not quite how it was shown a few days ago, but nonetheless, the impact of this storm is being felt. We had a core rain event, which is a very rare high-end rain event yesterday in parts of Broward and Miami counties, especially in the Fort Lauderdale area around the airport, where some record rainfall occurred in just a 12 to 24 hour stretch. We saw over 2 feet of rain in some areas, which is very extreme. You just don't see that kind of flooding too often in any one place in the U.S., but every now and then you get a place that gets a 1 in 1,000 year flood, and that was the case in the Fort Lauderdale area. And I'm going to show you that here in a little bit. Because of the slow motion of this storm, because of the amount of deep tropical moisture with it, we are potentially going to see a setup similar to that farther north in Florida. And something I'm going to be watching for here later today. Here is a look at the satellite image going back to yesterday. You can see the broad circulation off the Louisiana coast. There was kind of a circulation here just south of Key Largo, and that brought a strong easterly flow right into Broward County, Florida, and that's what produced the constant band of heavy rain. Now, aloft, there's a southwesterly flow up and over it, so we're seeing that moisture continuing to be fed from the Gulf right into South Florida. You can see there was kind of a weak surface circulation here yesterday evening, and that is now moving northward towards the Floribama region here, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, over towards Pensacola Beach. That's kind of where we're seeing our circulation of the strongest wind. Now, inland, wind is not really going to be an issue. It's all been offshore, so not really an organized storm system. However, we've got a lot of moisture coming in and some wind shear to talk about, and we are going to see an enhanced severe weather threat here later today into tonight. A slight risk of severe weather, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit. Here's how much rain fell yesterday in just 24 hours. It was not just a record, but a record that was annihilated at this one potential, or not potential, but this one weather station just on the south side of Fort Lauderdale, very close to the airport, which took on a ton of water. You get outside of that area and rain totals went down significantly, but even close to 10 inches fell yesterday in Hollywood, Florida. Close to 10 inches as well here just east of Plantation, and even North Lauderdale had over 8 inches of rain. So a very major weather event and a daily record rainfall, and even some hurricanes in 3 days have not produced this much rain. So this just goes to show you guys that weird freak events can happen, and they're happening more frequently in some areas here where we're building up the population. I think the urban heat island effect maybe comes into play here. Again, I don't know enough about it. I'm not really a climatologist, but I have seen events like this happen. We saw it in Houston during Tropical Storm Allison, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Imelda. We saw an event like this in eastern parts of Louisiana a couple years ago. We saw an event like this in Kentucky last year. So while they are not very large in nature, only covering 20 to 30 miles, they are very impactful. And unfortunately, I don't see a change in that coming anytime soon. Now, I did my video yesterday morning, and I did not have a model that really showed what was happening, but the NAM did start to pick up on a major rain event. This was the 12Z run. So this data was not available to most of us until about 9:30 Eastern yesterday, but you can see it did pick up on a band forming. It was too far south with it, though. It had it near the Miami area, just west of Miami International Airport. It was showing 16, 17 inches of potential rain. And this ended up happening, but it was farther north in southeastern Broward County. So it was off by about 20, 25 miles, but it did show that that idea was certainly there. So some of the higher resolution models do show things like this happening. They just don't really grasp onto it until, unfortunately, it's too late to really plan for something like this. Because it's kind of a local, what we call mesoscale event, it's not really something we can prepare for, but know that that potential is there. And I will show you today's NAM model. And obviously today is not going to be nearly as bad as all this rain has kind of shifted northward. But as you go up the coast of Florida here, I will show you that a similar event could happen farther up the coast here. In fact, the NAM is showing, this is really hard to see, so I'm going to kind of zoom in for you guys. Okay, it's not going to do it. So But you can see there's an area farther up here into the Vera Beach area that it shows kind of an area where potentially up to 8 inches of rain can fall over a short amount of time. So there's definitely a lot of rain to come. It's just a question mark of where and how intense. Here's what the radar looked like yesterday, and you can see what happened. We just had a stationary band of heavy rain. FLL here is Fort Lauderdale, MIA is Miami. They're about 25 miles apart. And you could see it just poured and poured and poured late yesterday afternoon into the evening when a lot of people were trying to get out of town or get out of work to get home. And that caused the roadways to just continue to flood. Some of the rivers just picked up, the water rose quickly, and we had a big time rain event. Really a once in a 1,000-year rain event here, according to this graphic from, I don't even know where this is coming from, but I know it's NOAA based. And here's what it looked like at the airport towards yesterday evening. Water submerged a lot of vehicles. Downtown looked like that as well in the evening as the rivers spread their banks. So my prayers are with you guys in South Florida. We never want to see an event like this happen. I know it's very impactful. A lot of people were in the path of that. We had a flood emergency. I really hope that lives were not lost, but I know with rising water, that certainly is a threat. If you're ever finding yourself in a situation like that where you're driving and the water's coming up, please, and I hate to echo the National Weather Service and sound kind of like, to dumb it down, but they're saying is turn around, don't drown. If you ever get into a situation like that, please do that. Don't get yourself trapped in waters because they will engulf your car. They will make it very difficult for you to leave the situation and you can drown. And we won't want to see anything like that happen. So moving on to today's weather, we do have a large region of high pressure over the eastern U.S., but that upper low down below it is going to produce some localized flooding today across the Gulf states as well as the east coast of Florida. We have a large area of critical fire danger from southeastern Arizona right on up into Nebraska. And we do have red flag warnings all the way up into the upper Great Lakes. It's going to be quite dry out there today and very warm with highs today in the 80s and low 90s again in this region here. So a lot of low humidity, a lot of hot temperatures and increasing wind, all creating what could be some fire danger conditions. We also have winter weather over parts of Montana, Idaho, and northwest Wyoming. Winter storm impacting those higher elevations. Interestingly, Salt Lake City had a record high the other day of 83 after all the snow they had. So we're seeing a rapid snowmelt in parts of the northern Rockies and the northern plains, and that could lead to localized flooding. Not the kind of flooding we saw in Florida, but high rising waters as all that snow continues to melt here across the Dakotas, across Minnesota, and even upper parts of Michigan and Wisconsin. So be prepared for that. Follow your local emergency managers and their advice for that. We do have a slight risk for severe weather today in the southeast. There will be the threat for a few tornadoes starting this morning on the panhandle of Florida and then spreading inland with the heating of the day in the southern and central Alabama, southern and central Georgia, northeastern Florida. Not going to be strong tornadoes like we see during these big winter and early spring outbreaks. This is more of a tropical type outbreak, which is rare to see in April, but does happen from time to time with a cutoff low pressure system. And just seeing word now that a tornado watch has been issued at 6:40 Eastern, so about 20 minutes ago as this video was being started. And that includes Panama City, Destin, Fort Walton Beach, Tallahassee, Southwest Georgia. There is a moderate risk for tornadoes. They're not going to be strong, but they'll be quick moving and quick spinning. There's also a moderate risk for some severe wind with gusts over 58 miles per hour possible. And there could be a few gusts up to 70 as well as this low pressure system moves inland and the gradient of wind tightens. Not going to be a hail event. These are not storm chaser type storms. These are low topped storms that can quickly spin up a tornado, and they can be embedded in areas of heavy rain as well. So they'll be tough to see. This continues until 1 o'clock this afternoon. That's central. So actually 2 o'clock Eastern time. Most of this area is in central, but I know Tallahassee and southwest Georgia are actually in Eastern time. The line is the Chattahoochee River. But we are going to see the threat for some tornadoes increasing as the day wears on today. Something to be aware of. And you'll see this upper low tracks northeastward tonight into Alabama and Georgia, and then weakens some as it moves into the western Carolinas tomorrow. But there'll be some fast enough wind aloft to produce some severe weather tomorrow afternoon and evening as the upper low moves through the area. So kind of a two-part system. You have the heavy rain kind of leading out ahead of where the wind shear is going to be. So you have the flood threat first, and then you've got the severe threat behind it as the kind of the warm sector hits the area. Now we have a strong upper level ridge in place in the northeast. Many record highs are likely tomorrow, will be well into the 80s, maybe approaching 90 in interior parts of the northeast, basically I-95 on west, except for Boston, which will have a sea breeze in the afternoon. But this upper low weakens as it ejects northeastward and hits that ridge. And then the stronger trough moves through here with our next storm system. And this is going to bring a huge change in temperature. It'll bring some severe weather here into the plains over the weekend, Ohio Valley into western Ohio and maybe Michigan. And then some snowflakes on the backside here Sunday night into Monday. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The video yesterday goes more into that. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the shorter term here, but I'll show you the GFS model. You can see this big storm over the southeast does weaken and kind of open up here by the time we get to Saturday morning, but we still have some severe weather potential. The next storm, though, is going to strengthen as it moves northward across Illinois and up into the UP of Michigan here. I don't know why it's so jumpy, but this is basically Sunday afternoon here, and the low pressure center's over lower Michigan and deepening. But with the cold air wrapping in right behind it, you've got a strong trough that's going to bring colder air from the upper levels down to the surface. That is going to produce some significant wet snow on the backside. It'll be hitting places like Chicago, according to the GFS, but especially eastern Wisconsin and the western UP of Michigan, right through northwestern Ontario here into Sunday and Sunday night. Not a huge snowstorm farther south of the Great Lakes, but Wisconsin on up, it's where the potential for the most significant snow is going to be. And then that front moves through the northeast here Sunday night, and it'll be a lot cooler here by Monday and Tuesday in the northeast with heavy mountain snow in the presidential range continuing into Wednesday morning. I'm not going to talk a lot about that in today's video. We just have too much going on in the short term, but there'll be updates coming as we get to the weekend. I will focus more on that for you guys as the forecast looks like it comes into a better agreement here. The European model is going to look a little bit different than the GFS. Nothing surprising there, but you can see potentially a lot of rain on the Gulf Coast over the weekend, significant severe weather potentially over Arkansas, northern Louisiana, basically the Mississippi River region, even into northern Mississippi here Saturday night. There will be some tornado threat. It is not going to be a repeat of what we saw back in March, but obviously any severe weather impacting this region is going to be bigger than it normally would be as we have weakened structures. We've got just places that were annihilated by tornadoes. So we don't want to see it, but unfortunately it is in the forecast here for Saturday night. And as we continue into Sunday, we see rain changing over to some wet snow around the Chicagoland area towards the end of the day Sunday, more likely Sunday evening, and especially north of Chicago. When you get to about Waukegan on northward, Sheboygan, those areas are going to see some accumulating snow, especially on the grass. And with that coming at night, we could see a few inches here for sure, continuing into Monday. Here are the winds out over the Gulf. One buoy picked up a wind gust of 71 miles per hour. It's not a tropical storm. It's not really even a subtropical storm. Some could argue that maybe it is, but it's got a lot of wind wrapped in right behind it. Just a lot of jet stream energy coming out of the upper level low. But notice on the Gulf Coast, we do have wind gusts over 30 miles per hour. So there will be some nasty wind that comes in with this rain, and conditions will be changing quickly. I was going to show this to you, but we already now have a tornado watch in effect. We also have the flash flood potential increasing over southeastern Mississippi, southwestern Alabama, and maybe even the Pensacola area here this morning. So definitely something to watch. If you look at the NAM model here from weatherbell.com, you can see how rain is going to pile up through this afternoon. This is 3 p.m. Central Time, and 2 to 3 inches possible here in southern and eastern Mississippi and southwestern Alabama. Mobile, you've got to be watching for flash flooding. And then we're going to see heavy rain up the east coast of Florida. Fortunately, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach southward should see minimal amounts today. The greater amounts will be basically north of the Bend, so the Treasure Coast right on up towards St. Augustine. We could also see some heavy rain over parts of northern and eastern Georgia. And as we get into tomorrow, maybe locally heavy rain as well across the Petey River Basin up through the Piedmont of North Carolina, as well as the mountains of upstate South Carolina, western North Carolina, possibly southeast Tennessee. And a lot of that's going to be coming during the afternoon tomorrow. So we could have some localized flooding as well in this area. The map looks kind of chaotic. You could expect that from a system like this that brings moisture north, and you have a lot of what we call mesoscale rain bands. They're not taking up the entire map. They're taking up 20 to 30 mile areas, but certainly that is what's being predicted on the NAM. And zooming into Florida, you can see here once again, we could get a lot of rain here east of Orlando. So Daytona, the Treasure Coast, the Space Coast, maybe even up to the first coast. A lot of this rain is going to fall this afternoon into this evening with thunderstorms, some of which could be locally severe with the threat for some tornadoes. Here's the HRRR, and I'm going to show you kind of how the storm cells look like they'll evolve. You've got this one band moving through the panhandle, which could produce some tornadoes here this morning. And that approaches Tallahassee just after lunchtime. The peninsula is not super busy until about 1 or 2. And then we see the risk for some scattered showers and storms once again northwest of Miami and Fort Lauderdale, maybe hitting the Palm Beach County area up into St. Lucie County, Indian River County. But some very heavy storms potentially here towards the end of the day east of Orlando. So Melbourne, Palm Bay up to Palm Coast, we could see some drenching storms. And it looks like the evening time frame is our best chance of seeing flash flooding east of Orlando and up the East Coast. So anywhere from about 4 to 10 o'clock tonight, be prepared for what I hope is not a core rain event, but certainly that is on the table here. We see more scattered showers and storms for the day tomorrow, mainly late in the afternoon into the evening. It doesn't look like everything will be as widespread. We have more of a southwesterly flow aloft. That's going to tend to push those storms off the coastline. But still, it's not looking like a great afternoon at the beach tomorrow on the East Coast. Should be better on the west coast of Florida. Now, farther north, I want to track this upper low with you and show you how much heavy rain is likely to batter Mississippi this morning, especially around Hattiesburg and up to just east of Jackson. Here's our circulation center on the HRRR. Now, you'll notice in the warm sector, we don't have a huge area of rain, but we will have scattered storms, which could drop some tornadoes with them and locally strong wind as well this afternoon. And that impacts Tuscaloosa between 2 and 4 o'clock. It also could sneak up into the Birmingham area. Sorry about that. Around 5, 6 o'clock, maybe Tupelo as well. So you have to watch this warm sector for localized severe storms, which could spin up some brief tornadoes, but they're likely going to be EF0, EF1 tornadoes, as the winds aloft aren't nearly as strong as what we've seen with the recent tornado outbreaks. As we get to overnight tonight, the upper low does shift eastward and move across Birmingham first thing tomorrow morning. That should put an end to the rain. And then we have to watch the southeast, especially Georgia and South Carolina tomorrow. Here's the HRRR model across Georgia, and we can see scattered showers this morning. And then we've got to watch southwest Georgia here early this afternoon, and maybe some scattered storms as well near the coast, including the low country at South Carolina this afternoon. Localized severe weather possible. This is the area, though, of main concern around 8 o'clock this evening between Macon and Statesboro, and maybe sneaking up into Athens, Georgia, and Augusta here this evening. We do have to watch for localized tornado warnings overnight tonight in the low country of South Carolina and also the CSRA. There could be a few tornado warnings here tonight. So be prepared in South Carolina and far eastern Georgia this evening, and then overnight tonight in South Carolina, and maybe even sneaking into southern North Carolina around daybreak tomorrow. I'll zoom over to the Carolinas so you guys can see that. And we do have a localized threat for maybe a tornado or two towards Wilmington, towards Leland, maybe getting into Jacksonville tomorrow morning. Probably not a big deal for Raleigh, although heavy rain could certainly be an issue here early tomorrow. But the second band that fires up out of our upper low around Fayetteville and Lumberton in the early to mid-afternoon hours does certainly bring us a concern for maybe some severe weather. There's a marginal risk for severe weather in here tomorrow, and maybe there's a chance that can get upgraded to a slight risk. We'll have to wait and see. There's not a lot of organization with tomorrow afternoon storms, but the modeling does show some lower topped kind of supercell type storms that we have to keep an eye on right on into the evening hours. And then things should very quickly weaken over time as we get into the overnight hours. But keep an eye on things in southern and central Virginia tomorrow evening as well. Looking back across the plains, our next outbreak of severe weather looks like it'll get going here later tomorrow across Kansas and Nebraska into tomorrow evening. And we maybe see some severe weather into Oklahoma as well. Less likely we see that in Texas, but as we get into Saturday, we will start to see storms firing up in here. The NAM model only goes out to about midday Saturday. Most of that severe weather is going to be in the afternoon and evening. Tomorrow's video is going to talk a little bit more about that. But we do see scattered showers and storms here moving through Saturday afternoon. This is the European model. Here's our low pressure moving through, and likely it's going to be a squall line with localized tornadoes, but more likely widespread wind damage from northern Louisiana up into central Illinois late Saturday into Saturday evening. And then maybe a renewed chance for some severe weather across Indiana, central Kentucky, eastern Tennessee Sunday morning. I think a better chance though farther east over northeast Kentucky, Ohio, eastern Indiana, and maybe even southern parts of Michigan Sunday afternoon. That will weaken Sunday night as it moves through West Virginia into western PA, but there could still be a threat for locally strong wind as well. You can see the lightning flash density here on the European, and there'll be quite a bit of lightning Saturday afternoon, starting in Missouri and then building south into the Arklatex. And then that spreads across the Mississippi River in the evening. That's when we could have severe weather Saturday evening, and then dies off quite a bit overnight. And then Sunday, it may pick back up over the Ohio Valley, especially the eastern Ohio Valley, maybe even western and southwestern West Virginia, and possibly even sneaking up towards Bridgeport and Fairmont in the afternoon hours around 7, 8 o'clock. And then things weaken by the time they hit the Northeast and hit the Appalachians. And temperatures on the GFS are going to be quite warm here tomorrow. You can see well into the 70s. Even Saturday, still some spring fever out there, 80s in some areas. As the storm moves through here Saturday night, we see temps in Chicago in the low 70s on Saturday. And then overnight, they drop off into the 50s and then keep falling Sunday night down into the upper 30s in the evening. So temperatures take about a 40-degree dive in the western Great Lakes states here on Sunday. Finally, we do have a severe tropical cyclone getting ready to hit Western Australia. This is Ilsa. It's a category 5 on the Indian Ocean scale. You can see the satellite shows that an eye feature formed very quickly, cleared out here, and winds had quickly intensified yesterday. This will be making landfall here tonight in Australia, which is going to be later this morning here in the U.S. Just east of Port Hedland. Forecast winds are expected to be about 150 to 160 miles per hour. Going to be pretty close to what Ian was when it hit Florida yesterday. Fortunately, not a highly populated area, but I do ask if you are a praying type to pray for the residents here of Western Australia who are going to be dealing with a rare severe cyclone. It's been 14 years since a storm this intense has hit Western Australia. That's going to move inland and weaken as it goes across the desert region here this weekend, but certainly an impactful storm system as well. And I'm sure we're going to hear about it in the news, and unfortunately, it doesn't look good. I appreciate y'all's time today. If you could like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to do my best to provide accurate, impactful weather forecasts for you with a daily map discussion pretty much every day, except maybe on Sunday we'll take that day off. But I thank you so much for your time today. I give all the glory to God who has called me to do this. And I like to just pronounce my faith for everybody. But really today, what I want to do is pray. And if you're a praying type, I would ask for you right now to pray for those residents that are dealing with the flash flooding here in Florida. Please pray for their safety and that the cleanup process goes as smoothly as it can. Please pray for the residents of Western Australia and those who have been impacted by recent tornadoes as well. May God have mercy on them. And I really hope that everybody stays safe and that the loss of life is minimal. And my goal is to just help you all be prepared for these major weather events. So thank you so much for your time today. If you have any prayer requests, happy to pray for you. Please list those in the comments. We'll all pray for you. And I thank you so much for your time today. God bless you. See you again in the morning.